I would like to start today by paying my respects to the Kaurna people and the land we meet on today. I honour their relationship with country, past, present and future. It is and it always will be Kaurna land. My name is Emma Fay and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Guildhouse, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this conversation today. This conversation is being recorded and will be shared with you as a recording. Best laid plans, we had obviously hoped to do this in a slightly different way, but in the times we live in, COVID is still wreaking havoc with us all. So thank you so much for your flexibility, and I hope this resource of this conversation is valuable and useful to you. I wanted just to start, before I introduce our wonderful speakers, to talk just a brief moment about why it is that we are here to talk about the Guildhouse Fellowship. Working with like-minded organisations to create and sustain opportunities for artists is an absolute highlight for me, but also for Guildhouse. And the sort of collaboration and true partnership has been the crux of the development of this initiative. In my early years at Guildhouse, or even my first few months, I spent a lot of time talking with artists and practitioners, other organisations and colleagues in the sector to talk about what those gaps and opportunities actually really were. And we also appointed an artist advisory group to be an additional sounding board for us as an organisation into the development of our programs and initiatives. And it became evident really, really quickly that what we needed was a greater focus on mid-career practitioners. And, you know, this isn't a South Australian thing. It's not unique to us. It's an important stage of career development for many, many practitioners. And there's a lack of opportunities that really address this particular chapter or phase of someone's career. As I mentioned, collaborations and partnerships are really critical to the way that we work. And we've had a really strong, long-standing relationship with the Art Gallery of South Australia. And when we started speaking about the possibility of creating a significant annual opportunity for mid-career artists in South Australia, the Art Gallery was right there for this conversation, which was really exciting. And it was all about supporting determined research, experimentation, and some access to training if need be throughout their mid-career years. And of course, this needs financial support, but also the intellectual space to commit to artistic development and professional sustainability. And so this fellowship is really developed intentionally to address these concerns. It's an expansive career opportunity for research if necessary, travel, and of course making time in the studio. And it's also about the opportunity to work with the curatorial team at AGSA and at Guildhouse to present new work. The James and Dinah Ramsay Foundation are passionate supporters of the arts, huge supporters of the arts in South Australia, and they have been here for us through this entire journey as well. They have provided the financial support to make this award possible and have done so over the duration of its first 3 years, and have just made a commitment in the last 6 months to extend this opportunity for a further 3 years in South Australia. So our first 3 recipients of the fellowship have been Troy Anthony Bayliss, Dr. Sarah Waters, and our current fellow is Liam Fleming. So it's now my absolute delight to introduce our speakers today. Liam Fleming is a Tantanya Adelaide-based glassblower, artist and designer with an active practice of over 10 years. He's an alumni of the University of South Australia's Visual Arts program and the JamFactory's glass training program. Fleming has worked part-time as a design manager at the JamFactory glass studio for several years. And I think he'll talk a little bit about the transition that he's had during his fellowship period. Liam is recognised for his unique sculptural objects which playfully test the constraints of glassblowing. Using a kiln to perform controlled demolition of his work, he explores the complicated relationship between craft, art, design and architecture. He's obviously a graduate of the JamFactory Associate program, as I said. He's also a finalist he was a finalist in the Ramsay Art Prize in 2021 and has exhibited extensively at Melbourne Design Week and internationally at London Design Week, Milan Design Week and in Berlin for Australia now. So of course, Liam is currently midway through his fellowship and is developing new work as part of this process, which we presented at AGSA in 2023. And Rebecca Evans, the Curator of Decorative Arts and Design at the Art Gallery of South Australia. Rebecca Evans is this curatorial superstar who joined us in South Australia several years ago now and has quickly sort of become entrenched in the wonderful fibre of the South Australian artistic community. And she's responsible for the gallery's extensive collection of Australian and international decorative art objects dating from antiquity to contemporary. And it's a collection that is very vast. It includes ceramics, glass, furniture, metalwork, jewellery, fashion and textiles. And prior to joining the Art Gallery in 2016, she was the Assistant Curator, Decorative Arts and Design at the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney. Rebecca has incredibly strong interests in contemporary and historic fashion and textiles and jewellery, and has curated many impressive shows that I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with, having seen them either in South Australia or further afield. So now it gives me great pleasure to pass over to Rebecca and Liam, and they will speak about Liam's experience of the fellowship. And of course, we can also end on some Q&A as a bit of a wrap up. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Thanks, Liam.
Thank you, Emma. That was a very generous introduction. I think, Liam, very embarrassed by that.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, but I thought, Emma did say that we're going to have a chat about your fellowship. And I think, in many ways, I don't know where we are logistically within the year, but I feel that we're kind of in, I don't know, the middle part of it. I feel like there's still a lot of juicy parts to come with your fellowship. Absolutely. So, there's more stuff to come, I'm sure. But, I read your application, and one of the things that stood out to me was a great sense of timing. The language that you used, it seemed that the fellowship was the right time for you in putting the application together and submitting it. Could you start by telling everyone what drew you to apply to the fellowship last year, this round?
Thanks, Rebecca. What drew me to it? Well, absolutely, I thought the opportunity was right now. I was, I guess, during the Ramsay Art Prize period and kind of developing a bunch of new work, I was just really enjoying being in the studio. And so I just really wanted to dive right in. And I felt the time was now because I have been building my skills for the last, little while in the Jam, and I'm feeling very confident in all those kind of aspects of my making. And then this new development of work, which was part of the Ramsay, I just felt like that was the real beginning of where that could go. And so I guess that's where that timing period was really important for me. I think I just wanted the injection of confidence and it kind of has worked, like I'm feeling that the fellowship at the moment has just offered me a lot of clarity. And so that's kind of integral for coming into the studio and just knowing kind of what I want to do. And so at the moment, I guess for the last 6 months, 6 months, I've been the ability to come in and work has just been so unreal. And I think I'm a slow maker, but and I've had a lot of failures, which has all been fantastic. But just that ability to do that. And I don't think I would have, I think that's why it was now, there was not so much 3 years ago or whatever. I think that was I had these visions of what I wanted to make, and I've had the ability to get that kind of out of my system in the last 6 months. And now I'm kind of coming to this point where I'd like to, view all that work, and which is kind of nice timing as well. And this is another thing. It's allowing me to, I don't want to say the word sit back, but as in just step away from the making for a second and just view what I've been doing for the last 6 months. Yeah.
There's kind of, in your application, and I can see this playing out in the real world through your fellowship, there's a sense that you say, this is who I am as an artist. This is who I know myself to be. This is what I've learned. And this is what I want to be next. This is where I want. It's very, very clear. And you say, I need this fellowship to go to where I want to go. It's just really, it was a really lovely thing to read and read post, you're having 6 months in the fellowship. It was a lovely thing to read, and also knowing you and knowing your practice.
Oh, well, great. Thanks. I'm glad it's working out. Yeah. Feels great.
Yeah, good. You touched a little bit on it about having time in the studio, and what I would love you to talk about is that immediate impact that the fellowship had. The first things that it enabled you to do.
Well, I guess the first things that enabled me to do was clean my studio. No, was to come and sit here and start generating work. Like I kind of started straight away. This was in November.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the first 2 months, I really kind of dialed in the studio a little bit more, got a bit more equipment, so that ability to invest in a few things in the studio. And then I just started making. And so just having the space away. So, I mean, I guess I usually work heavily at the JamFactory, and just having this cold working setup where probably a third of my work is, or 2/3. So like just having that space away and having all the things here has been really valuable for me. And so then, yeah, I've just spent the most of the time making work, and I'm just, I guess I'm in this really nice position where I've kind of worked out my working methodologies, and my work's just asking a whole lot more questions than it's answering. And so it's just giving me more and more work to make, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think I think Debbie says this a lot, that the fellowship, you are the project, you are the fellowship. I think we're very much a program to be very outcome oriented. And I think that, and listening to you and, in a few studio visits I've made to see you are being able to be deeply reflective on your own practice is, an incredible outcome even so far, without even being able to, nail it down to a specific body of work or, an article or greater representation. I think that, is a really wonderful outcome already.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the clarity part that's really coming along with this fellowship, is just that I felt my work can vary quite a lot, and I've just really been able to hone in on this kind of, my process, which has been, drawing, mold making, glass blowing, cold working, kiln forming. It's just kind of, I can fit that all in, and I'm really loving just doing that process over and over and over again now at the moment.
Is that how you're spending your days? Are you in the studio? Are you spending time with other artists? You drawing? I know you're doing a lot of drawing. Yeah. What do your days look like at the moment?
At the moment, so I guess glassblowing's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat in that sense, that I probably do a day a week now rather than 4 days a week. So then now my days are mostly sketching and metal work in the studio. And then once I have pieces, and a lot of cold working. And so then I try and get a piece in the kiln like each week, really. I think that's kind of my goals. And whether they're successful or not isn't too much of a thought process at the moment, just because of the methods. I'm really enjoying the process. I'm really enjoying. So it's obviously, that's the beauty of the financial support in this whole Guildhouse Fellow, is just that ability to invest in my work and invest in the long run, really, rather than thinking short term. Yeah,
it's interesting, because I imagine that being at the JamFactory and being in the glass studio it's very organized in terms of time. I don't know the logistics of it, but there's an element of freedom of being kind of outside of that, and being in your own studio and spending time reflecting quite broadly on your practice across, particularly drawing. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess it's like working in our 4-hour blocks, and
Yeah.
so I guess that's how I've kind of approached just applying that same working to myself, which is always like what I've loved about the JamFactory is the ability that it teaches us how to work. And so like, I guess that's what I'm not afraid of. And it's just given me this big confidence to just be able to do it for myself in that way.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we've talked about this a little bit before in different studio visits, but I think it is worthwhile for people to know, and this can be something that, you know, I know you've thought a lot about this through the fellowship, but, you know, what does ambition look like for you through the fellowship?
Yeah, ambition. I guess that's testing my own knowledge, isn't it, of the material. And I guess that's what I love about glass, and I love about glass blowing and all of its aspects. And so I guess that I'm in ambition for my work. I'm just going a little bit larger, but not too much. I'm just trying to push as far as I can. The mold making process is becoming a little bit more complicated, and not that I necessarily want that to be visible in the final thing. It's just that I can invest that little bit more time in that mold design, I guess, and sourcing other ways of making, like laser cutting or laser cutting the metal, that is, and different ways of welding and things like that. So I'm just, those kind of learning opportunities I've been able to give myself is kind of very ambitious, I think, for myself. So yeah, and then also I guess that's where my drawing has been very important, is that I've been able to sketch out, on some isometric paper or things like that, and just start. They've just got a little bit more complicated or a little bit more larger scale, and so I'm just kind of trusting myself and my abilities in the glass world that I can kind of translate those drawings back into actual glass, into an object. And I guess that's where the fun part is for my work, is that I can have all this planned, but in the end, doesn't come out the way I want it. And that's the joy, and that's the fun part, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're talking a little bit about sort of our the immediate impact, but I know that you've also had, you were at Canberra Glassworks, was it last year?
Oh no, it was in February, the month of February.
Like, you can't trust time at the moment.
Oh, that's right.
And you've just come back from Melbourne Design Week, so you've had some opportunities to be interstate. Yeah, and could you talk about those?
Yeah, well, for Canberra Glassworks, that was a residency which was amazing to work in those facilities. I was hit the ground running once I got there. I took glass with me so I could just start making as quickly as possible. And I had January, which I made a lot as well at the Jam. So I had this really lovely momentum going into it. And so I was very productive. And it was a month of, blowing glass 3 days a week, and then cold working. And so it was nice opportunities to talk to other artists, talk to other glass makers, not just glass blowers. It was kiln formers and casting, and so there are different insights in the knowledge that over there is fantastic. And so I was able to kind of grab a hold of a few people and kind of talk to them about a bit more technical work, I guess, technical sides. And then so the opposite, being away was kind of lovely after the last 2 years of being in Adelaide. And then Melbourne Design Week, I guess, was an opportunity to just maybe show a little of what I've been kind of working on, and just, I don't know, get a little bit of feedback. say. And so that was quite nice to have some of those kind of smaller things to, draw on and kind of put it out, test us, and then, I guess view and then have a look back, and which I'm kind of doing now. So that's nice.
Yeah, you're a bit of a Ramsay success story, aren't you? I should be very clear that there is no connection between the judging for the Ramsay Art Prize and the fellowship. These are completely independent. But I know, I never had the privilege of meeting Diana, but I know that she loved young artists, and I know she would have been absolutely delighted that you've had such a wonderful experience, firstly as a finalist in the Ramsay Art Prize, and then as the fellow. It's quite delightful. I wanted to ask you, because this is co-run by two different sort of cultural organisations. I mean, you've got Debbie and you've got Emma and the team at Guildhouse, who are just really amazing arts administrators and potentially the most organised people I know on North Terrace. And then you also have access to the gallery's collection and the curators, as in myself, but also other members of the curatorial team. And what has that meant? Was that something that was of interest to you in developing the application, and something that you would like, how would you like to think about that in your fellowship?
Well, I guess initially I really wanted to make things, and I was kind of a little bit hellbent on that. And I actually think I'm only coming to that kind of spot of knowing where I'm going, knowing how I'm feeling. And I guess talking to you, Rebecca, I'm trying to now think of more the context of how my work can sit in the gallery and or in those presentation, or how I can make this, I didn't really quite have that vision of what it was. And now I'm starting to develop that interest in, I want to communicate a little bit more, say. I mean, I love the painting collection and I love all the works in the art gallery. So, I think those kind of works I'm kind of more drawn to in the end. So I think that's where hold on. Sorry, I need to think about that one.
Well,
I guess that's the honor. Yeah,
because you have the project,
it
is what you need from from us at the gallery and from the team at Guildhouse, and there is a great level of self-direction there, and so it can come at different times.
And I feel like the time is coming now, really, to be honest. At the beginning it wasn't so much. I might have not known what I could ask for, but now I'm kind of starting through the making process. I'm actually getting to the point. I'm like, oh, okay, no, actually, now this is a question for Rebecca. And maybe not having to rely on myself and that pressure.
And Lee Robb, our contemporary art curator, and the entire curatorial team. I think people are mistaken for thinking that the collection belongs to the gallery, but it's very naff to say it, but it belongs to the people of South Australia. And we love having artists looking at our collection. And when Sarah Waters was doing her fellowship, we had a couple of sessions looking at the collection, and I know that one sampler in particular really informed the body of work that she produced for the Adelaide Biennials. So there are sometimes very direct links there, and then others are less direct, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm an artist that likes the color red and I'm going to look at red paintings and then produce a new body of, it is blue. So it's blue. It's about what you need, and we are happy to facilitate access to the collection, whatever the fellow needs.
That's it.
Yeah, that might be the next step. I think I've got maybe one last question, which I think comes up a lot. And talking about the gallery, I think people, and I feel like I've said this a lot, but the fellow is is the project, is the fellowship, and it's not about specific outcomes. It's not about the solo exhibition at the Art Gallery of South Australia. I know is something that comes up a lot. And I thought, throw it back to you in terms of, what in terms of the relationship with the gallery. There's obviously the collection. What were your thoughts in writing your application, but then also as you've developed and moved through the fellowship in terms of sort of potential actual outcomes at the gallery?
Yes, initially I was very open, I guess, to kind of anything that would happen. And I guess that's why I was, again, very keen to make things, just to develop that understanding of where I wanted to go and maybe where my work wanted to go. And then so then my vision for the outcome wasn't there. It was more about myself and my working methodology. And so then that's kind of how, now that I've been through this process for the last 6 months, it's kind of a little bit more clarified in the way that I would like to start seeing how this outcome could be. And I guess that's that's the exciting part, is the and the research and the development is like that. I wanted to be as open as I could possibly be to either other people's input into see and how people view my work and how that can correlate with the context of other work. And so that's the exciting part, I think, for me. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot about the difference between Troy and Sarah when they went through their fellowships. Sarah ended up having, she's part of the biennial, but that isn't a direct kind of outcome. Well, it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It's all interrelated, but it wasn't a deliberate art gallery programmed exhibition. It was something that happened, may or may not have happened as a result of her having the fellowship, but she's produced that amazing body of work for the Adelaide Biennial. And then Troy, obviously were able to have his work on display at the gallery and programmed into our exhibition calendar. So it was very different, but both of them were very kind of a natural evolution of the fellowship and suited those particular artists. It's interesting how it happened. Right. Oh,
and good. To that point, Rebecca, thank you so much. I just wanted to jump in because that's something that's so often a question, and it's very top of mind, very front of mind when artists are writing applications for the fellowship. And it's the strength of both the opportunity to research and reflect and have that incredible time for critical engagement and experimentation that Liam's talked about. But we know that the opportunity to work with the art gallery and to plan some kind of presentation outcome is clearly a major draw as well. And that can sometimes, I think, be a bit of a stumbling block in terms of how people present their application, is that sometimes they can foreshadow their application by thinking very much about the outcome and not stop stepping back and giving that breathing room, because as you say, these things really evolve throughout the course of the fellowship. And even if you had an idea at the beginning, it may very well be a very different sort of outcome that you'd like to plan once you've had that incredible time of research and experimentation. Would you want to comment at all on that, Liam? Did you have any thoughts?
Well, no, I guess that was my thoughts exactly, was just to observe through the process and not be so strict on myself on going, this is what I want. I really wanted my work to, walk a little bit first and then see how that kind of works out, really.
Anything that you would comment further on that, Rebecca?
No, I think that's beautifully put. And I think, the thing I love about this is, we're all too often in the arts always having to tick boxes and, in our acquittals and our Exactly. And what's fantastic about this is giving space and breadth to these artists to find out in many ways who they are as artists and to grow in that space. And you know, it's a delight to see so far what Liam's been able to achieve, and the confidence and the clarity that is coming for him, and has been coming for a while, but definitely in the last 6 months, definitely since the fellowship, it's an absolute delight to watch.
Wonderful. Can I ask a question of you, Rebecca? And I'd also wouldn't mind, Liam, if you've got thoughts on this too. One of the other really challenging aspects of defining career stage for practitioners, and I find that you know, Debbie and I have talked about this at length, and with lots of artists, is how do we define mid-career? You know, we've moved away from the finite number of so many years post-art school, because we're not saying you even have to have completed an arts degree in order to, you know, to be eligible. That's not an eligibility criteria. And we've acknowledged that there are many reasons why someone's career trajectory isn't necessarily completely concurrent. So I just wondered if a little discussion about what mid-career practice is really like from a couple of different standpoints would be really valuable. Because there are, you know, whilst it's not concrete, there is some definite distinctions between what constitutes an established artist versus a mid-career artist, for instance.
Yeah, well, I might go back to Liam's application. I'm not going to quote you because I don't know what it is. But, you know, I mean, because I work with artists who sit in more craft-based practice. And Liam talks a little bit in his application about, you know, he's spent the first part of his career knowing his craft and knowing it inside out. And Liam is well known in Adelaide and across Australia for being a wonderful glass practitioner. And he talks about in his application that he describes his mid-career as being a period of unlearning, I dare say of learning and finding out who he is as an artist. So it may be the moment when an artist has, definitely I would say craft-based practitioners, knowing their craft and their materiality, maybe not as much as they could know, because, you know, it's a lifetime marriage often with these techniques, but it's a process of maybe, you know, breaking down some of the traditions and breaking free with maybe some of, you know, confines is not the right word, but finding themselves and their own practice within that tradition and what they want to do. So, you know, that's probably how I would talk about mid-career in terms of craft-based practitioners, but I'm sure that also applies to artists that work more within the fine art tradition.
Liam, would you have anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I would absolutely say the same thing, actually. Someone who can show confidence in what they're doing, like in any medium or whatever their specialty is how, you know, like what's there needs to be the next step into what questioning what that material, for me, say is doing, and how can you speak that language. And I guess that's where I see that kind of I know we just said not years, but like, you know, for me, I've been working with this material for enough that I completely understand it, but I also want to like try and question my own learning, and that's it. Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting thing, is it's the amount of time you've spent in your practice is obviously critical, but it's not about age. I think that's the other thing, is it's not like, you know, you start off at a certain point, because people can commence their career at all different stages of their life, or as I said, have breaks and things like that. So it is an interesting nebulous sort of a definition, and I think sometimes having just a little bit more conversation about that is really helpful for people who are considering applying for the fellowship. Are there any questions you'd like to ask of Rebecca or myself, Liam, in terms of this conversation, thinking about advice or encouragement for other artists who are considering applying for the Guildhouse Fellowship in 2022? What would your advice be?
I think my advice is maybe similar to Sarah's. I can't quite remember, but it was just being honest. And I think that's like, I think that was key for me, is that I guess I didn't like what we've been saying, the outcomes and things. I was just honest that I just wanted this time and space, and I really believed that this is right for me right now. And I guess I didn't overcomplicate it in that sense. It was just that it was, and I guess that's my main advice is don't, just be honest with yourself, and that's it.
I think not making things too convoluted and being very clear and honest about where you are and where you feel you need to be and how this is going to be instrumental is really, really critical. Some other little top tips from Emma. Make sure you choose your strong images. I mean, it goes without saying, I think, in terms of putting forward a really strong case, but for this application for the Guildhouse Fellowship, we invite an external judge to the panel who is not necessarily familiar with South Australian artists, and we do so to bring a fresh perspective. And it's really important that they, just like the rest of the panel, are seeing the best examples of your work as to where you are and where you want to go. So just thought I'd make that little top tip. Any other top tips before we wrap this conversation up?
Yeah. Spend the money on images.
I would definitely agree with that. Having judged a few prizes, and images, yes. We want to be able to clearly read the work.
Yeah. Agreed. This is it's an incredible opportunity, and I really encourage everyone who feels this is the right time for them to have a conversation with us. Reach out to the Guildhouse team, have a conversation with Debbie Pryor. She's making herself available to have one-on-one conversations where possible, to give some feedback or advice around your ideas, which is really something that is something that's really intrinsic to the way that we want to work here at Guildhouse, because we're not just interested in the business of putting people through a rigorous application process and either being successful or failing. We want this to be a positive learning experience for you, no matter what the outcome is. And that's why we do also do our best to offer feedback in a timely fashion if people will find that valuable. I also just love to take the opportunity to tell people about other things that we have opening soon. So if the fellowship is not, this is not the right time for you or not the right opportunity for you, we really encourage you to have a look at the Catapult mentorship program that will also open soon, and you can learn lots of about that program on our website. And just in closing, I want to thank the Art Gallery of South Australia. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you to the whole team, the leadership team and the curatorial crew for all your support in working with us to make this such a rich experience, and the James and Dinah Ramsay Foundation for their generosity and their vision, for really believing in the importance of artists and wanting to invest in them so deeply, because that is exactly why we're all here doing this work. I think that's about it. And there's lots more information available on the website and FAQs and all the good things. Thank you also, Liam, for making yourself available to have this conversation. And we're just so pleased with everything that you're doing as part of your fellowship. It's been a joy to watch. So we'll keep talking with you and doing more great things. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.